The late-night shift at the small Starlight Diner was usually steeped in a melancholic silence. The faint hum of the flickering neon sign outside barely managed to pierce the thick blanket of night. Anya Petrova, her apron stained with coffee and exhaustion etching lines around her eyes, slowly wiped down the counter, her heart yearning for the end of her shift. The weariness of a long day seemed to cling to her every movement. Then, the jingle of the bell above the door shattered the quietude. Anya looked up, expecting perhaps a weary trucker or a local craving a late-night coffee. Instead, a sharply dressed man entered, an aura of command radiating from his expensive suit, a garment that likely cost more than her entire year's rent. He moved with quiet confidence, his piercing gaze sweeping across the diner as if accustomed to owning every room he entered. Anya watched as he settled into a booth by the window, his intense gaze fixed on the glittering cityscape outside. When Anya approached to take his order, the man didn't even glance at the menu. Black coffee. His voice was deep and resolute. She nodded curtly, scribbling down the request. A few minutes later, as Anya returned with his drink, he barely acknowledged her presence. Used to the indifference of customers, she didn't take it personally. But as he reached for his wallet to pay, something slender slipped out and fluttered to the floor. A photograph. It landed face up, the image clear and distinct. Anya's heart seemed to seize in her chest. She recognized that face. The warm, gentle smile, the kind eyes that held a universe of love. It was her mother. For a fleeting moment, all Anya could do was stare, her pulse hammering in her ears. Then, before she could consciously stop herself, she bent down and picked it up. Where did you get this? Anya's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. The man's head snapped up, his cool blue eyes locking onto hers. For the first time, he seemed to truly see her. Anya turned the photograph towards him, her fingers gripping it tightly. Why do you have a picture of my mother? A flicker of something unreadable crossed the man's face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a mask of cold composure. Without a word, he reached for the photograph, his fingers brushing against Anya's as he took it back. You must be mistaken, he said, tucking it back into his wallet, as if it were a meaningless scrap of paper. Anya's stomach twisted into a knot. She knew exactly what she had seen. Her mother, Irina, had kept a nearly identical photograph in a small, treasured memory box back home. Anya had memorized every crease, every minute detail. This wasn't a mistake. I'm not mistaken, Anya insisted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Why do you have it? The man exhaled sharply, adjusting the cuff of his impeccably tailored suit. I owe you no explanation. Then, before Anya could react, he stood, placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter, and strode towards the door. Panic surged through her. He was leaving. This might be her only chance to uncover the truth. Anya rushed out from behind the counter, nearly knocking over a stack of plates in her haste. Wait, she called after him. Dad! But the man didn't stop. He was already heading towards a sleek black car parked at the curb, the chauffeur swiftly opening the rear door. Anya's heart pounded in her chest. Please, ... Just tell me how you knew her. For a brief moment, the man paused, his hand resting on the car door. Anya hoped that he might actually say something. Instead, he turned just enough to meet her gaze, his stare cool and detached. Then, in a voice utterly devoid of emotion, he said, Forget this. He then slid into the car, the door closing with a soft thud. The engine roared to life, and before Anya could take another step, the vehicle disappeared into the night. Anya stood frozen on the sidewalk, her breath coming in ragged bursts. A billionaire had just walked into her life and left her with more questions than she could possibly count. Who was he? And why did he possess a photograph of her mother? Anya knew with unwavering certainty that she wouldn't let this go. She was determined to unearth the truth. Sleep eluded Anya that night. She sat hunched over her tiny kitchen table, the glow of her ancient laptop illuminating her determined face as she desperately searched for any clue about the enigmatic man from the diner. She didn't know his name, had no business card, no receipt with a name, only his face, his voice. In the dismissive way, he had looked at her as if she were nothing more than an insignificant inconvenience. But that photograph had irrevocably changed everything. She began by searching for prominent, wealthy businessmen, real estate tycoons, and influential CEOs. Dozens of names and faces flickered across her screen, but none matched the man from the diner. Frustration mounted with each passing hour. Just as despair began to creep in, she saw him. Julian Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries, a billionaire real estate magnate whose empire spanned continents. His name synonymous with luxury developments and high-profile acquisitions. Anya clicked on his image, her breath catching in her throat. It was him. She frantically scrolled through article after article, but there was absolutely no mention of her mother, no past relationships, no known family ties beyond his immediate relatives. Nothing. This could only mean one thing. It deliberately erased her. Anya clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. He had walked into that diner holding a picture of her mother and acted as if she did unexist, as if Irina Petrova had meant absolutely nothing. The thought ignited a fierce fire within her. She wouldn't let this stand. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to begin her pursuit. The following morning, Anya boarded the first bus downtown, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. She stepped off in front of a towering glass skyscraper that pierced the sky. The headquarters of Thorne Industries. The building loomed over her, a stark symbol of wealth and power, but Anya refused to be intimidated. She walked through the revolving doors into the opulent lobby, her steps firm. She approached the sleek reception desk, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I need to see Mr. Julian Thorne," she stated. The impeccably dressed receptionist barely looked up from her computer screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Anya admitted. "But it's urgent." The receptionist sighed, clearly unimpressed. "Mr. Thorne does not take walk-in meetings." Anya had anticipated this. She had no appointment, no official reason to be there. If she wanted answers, she would have to find another way in. Her eyes darted around the expansive lobby, taking in every detail. Security guards stood strategically near the elevators. Employees flashed identification badges to pass through the turnstiles. There was no way she was getting in the conventional way. Then she spotted him. A young man in his mid-20s, precariously balancing a coffee cup and a thick folder, heading towards the elevators. He looked distracted. Anya moved quickly, falling into step beside him. "Hey," she whispered urgently. "Wait up. You forgot to send me that report Mr. Thorne needed." The young man blinked, startled. "What?" Anya sighed dramatically, feigning exasperation. "The Peterson Project report. He was expecting it this morning." Before he could fully process her words, Anya smoothly stepped forward, walking right through the turnstile just as his badge activated the sensor. The guard barely glanced at her. She was in. Her pulse hammered against her ribs as she stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. This was it. She was about to come face to face with Julian Thorne. In this time, he wouldn't be able to simply walk away. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the opulent executive floor of Thorne Industries. Anya stepped out, her breath shallow, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. The reception area here was even more sleek, modern, and intimidating than downstairs. A man in a dark suit approached her instantly, his expression stern. "Miss, do you have an appointment?" "No," Anya replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "But I need to see Julian Thorne. It's about my mother." The man's jaw tightened. "Mr. Thorne does not take unscheduled visitors." Anya exhaled, her heart pounding in her chest. "Tell him my mother's name was Irina Petrova. I am not leaving until I speak to him." The man hesitated for a long moment before disappearing down a hushed hallway. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, finally, a door opened. Julian Thorne stepped out. The moment his eyes landed on Anya, a flicker of something crossed his face. Not surprise, not anger, something closer to a profound resignation. He walked towards her, his steps slow and deliberate. Then, after a long, pregnant pause, he simply said, "Come with me." Anya followed him into his spacious, impeccably furnished office, her heart racing with a whirlwind of emotions. The moment the heavy oak door closed behind them, she turned to face him. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to his large mahogany desk, reached into his wallet, and placed the photograph on the polished surface. Anya stared at it, her gaze unwavering. Then, slowly, her eyes lifted to meet his. "You knew her," she whispered, the realization dawning with a painful clarity. Julian met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "I didn't just know her," he finally said, his voice heavy with a long-suppressed sorrow. "I loved her." Anya's world tilted on its axis. She had come seeking answers, but she was utterly unprepared for this revelation. Julian leaned against his desk, exhaling sharply. "I loved her," he repeated, his voice carrying the weight of years of regret. "But I walked away." Anya's chest tightened, a sharp pang of something akin to betrayal piercing her heart. "Why?" Julian's jaw clenched, the lines around his eyes deepening with pain. "Because I was a coward. My family, ... They made it unequivocally clear. If I stayed with Irina, I would lose everything. Inheritance, the business, my place in their world." Anya's stomach churned with a bitter mix of anger and a dawning understanding of the societal pressures that could tear people apart. "So you abandoned her for money?" Julian's gaze darkened, a flash of defensiveness momentarily flickering in his eyes. "I told myself I would come back for her. Once I had secured my future, once I had the power to defy them. But by the time I did, ... she was gone." Anya's hands curled into fists, her nails digging into her palms. Her mother had suffered, had raised her alone, while this man had lived a life of unimaginable luxury. "She never told me about you," Anya whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Not once." A profound pain flickered in Julian's eyes. "'Cause she wanted to protect you, ... from me." Anya's breath hitched as she struggled to process the weight of Julian's confession. She straightened, her gaze fixed on him. "Protect me from my own father." The heavy silence that followed was thick with unspoken words and years of lost time. Anya took a shaky breath, trying to untangle the complex web of emotions swirling within her. She needed space to think, to reconcile the man standing before her with the idealized image of a father she had never known. Without another word, she turned and walked out of his office, leaving Julian standing alone amidst the symbols of his vast empire. That night, Anya returned to her small apartment, the weight of Julian's confession pressing down on her. She began to meticulously search through her mother's belongings, hoping to find the missing pieces of the puzzle Irina had never shared. As she carefully sifted through old letters and faded keepsakes, her fingers brushed against something small and velvet soft, tucked away at the bottom of a worn wooden box. Anya's breath caught in her throat as she pulled out a delicate silver locket. Her fingers trembled as she carefully opened it.
Nice.
Inside lay a tiny, faded photograph of a younger Julian, his eyes full of a hopeful tenderness she had never witnessed. Beneath the photograph, nestled on a bed of aged velvet, was a folded piece of paper written in her mother's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Anya," it began, "this belonged to your father. I kept it for you, hoping that one day you would understand the choices we made and the love that bound us, even in separation." A wave of emotion washed over Anya, a potent cocktail of grief, longing, and a dawning sense of connection to the man she had just confronted. The locket and the note were a tangible link to a past she had only vaguely imagined. It was a testament to a love that had endured despite the obstacles, a love that had ultimately created her. The slight alteration in the plot here is the discovery of the locket before a second confrontation, giving Anya a more personal and concrete piece of evidence. The next morning, Anya found herself standing once again before the towering glass structure of Thorn Industries, the silver locket clutched tightly in her hand. The city buzzed around her, but her mind was consumed by the image in the locket and the words in her mother's letter. This man was her father. She took a deep breath, a newfound sense of purpose hardening her resolve, and marched inside. This time there was no sneaking in. She strode confidently up to the reception desk, her voice clear and steady. "I need to see Mr. Julian Thorne. It's urgent." The same receptionist barely glanced up. "As I said before, Mr. Thorne does not take walk-ins." Anya's hand slammed onto the polished counter, the silver locket glinting in the artificial light. "Then tell him his daughter is here." The receptionist's polite facade faltered, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. There was a moment of stunned silence before she finally reached for the phone. Within moments, 2 security guards approached Anya, but before they could escort her out, a deep voice cut through the air. Let her in. Julian stood at the end of the hallway, his face etched with a mixture of apprehension and a desperate hope. He turned and walked towards his office without another word. Anya followed, her pulse pounding in her ears. Inside, the heavy door closed behind them, enveloping them in a thick silence. Anya wasted no time. She placed the silver locket on his desk, the tiny photograph of his younger self facing him. "Explain this," she said, her voice trembling slightly but firm. Julian stared at the locket, his breath catching in his throat. His fingers hovered over it, as if afraid to touch a relic from a life he thought was lost forever. His jaw tightened, his carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. "She kept it," he murmured, almost to himself, his voice thick with emotion. "She didn't just keep it," Anya countered, her voice laced with a raw vulnerability. "She left it for me, along with a letter. She never told me who my father was, but this... ... She gestured to the locket. "This told me everything." Julian exhaled sharply, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of utter defeat. "I didn't know," he admitted, his voice raw with regret. "If I had known she was pregnant, if I had known about you..." He let the words trail off, the unspoken years of what-ifs hanging heavy in the air. Anya's chest ached, but she refused to let sympathy completely eclipse the years of unanswered questions. "But you didn't know, did you, because you left?" "I searched for her, Anya," Julian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "By the time I realized the enormity of what I had lost, she had disappeared. I hired investigators. No trace. She made sure I wouldn't find her." Anya swallowed the lump in her throat. That sounded exactly like her mother, fiercely protective, even in absence. But was it truly protection, or had it also stolen something precious from her? "She thought she was protecting me from you," Anya said slowly, testing the weight of the words as they left her lips. "She didn't think you deserved to be in my life." Julian flinched, as if struck by a physical blow. Maybe... ... maybe she was right. Silence hung between them, thick with the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. For the first time, Anya saw the cracks in his carefully constructed armor, the deep regret, the profound sorrow, the years of wondering what might have been. "I can't change the past, Anya," Julian said, his voice quieter now, stripped of its usual authority. "But I can be here now, if you'll let me." Anya's fingers tightened around the locket in her pocket. "Forgive, love, begin." Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Not yet." Julian nodded slowly, his expression solemn and understanding. "I don't expect you to." Anya took a shaky breath, her mind reeling with a torrent of questions, emotions, and profound uncertainty. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to walk away this time, not yet. For the first time, she was willing to listen, to perhaps begin to understand the man who was her father. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt fragile, like a delicate thread that could snap at any moment. Finally, Anya reached into her pocket and clasped the silver locket around her neck. Her mother had left this for a reason. Maybe it wasn't just about Julian. Maybe it was about giving Anya the choice her mother had never truly had. Julian's eyes flickered to the locket resting against Anya's skin, his breath catching slightly. She... ... She really never stopped thinking about me, did she? Anya swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat.